Bard on the Plains podcast with Mike McPeek. It's about stories, mine and yours.
As I've said before, I hated snow days because that meant we'd have to clean the barns. Dad's philosophy was, why buy a skid steer when you have a teenager and a pitchfork? If I would have taken the time to think of it back then, I would have realized that the barns needed to be cleaned out or else they would just fill up and be unusable. But my teenage self didn't think that far ahead. I just wanted to have fun and not work all the time. But now that I'm older and a dad, I can look back and learn some lessons from this. It's easy to be philosophical 45 years out. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes you just have to do the job one forkful at a time. Let me describe the problem with a barn full of manure. It's hard packed and interlocked together thanks to the straw that was put down for bedding. Then add feces and urine plus the weight of the animals walking on it to compress it. And then add time, it becomes a big stringy mess that needs to be pulled apart. Now you may ask, why do we let it go so long before we clean it up? Letting it sit will help it ferment and become rich in nutrients. Like a lot of things on the farm, you made the most of what you have. Not only did the bedding keep the animals dry and warm, it would also serve as a supply of food for your crops and increase your yields. You also didn't want to clean the barns out too often either. Having it build up creates a thermal mass that will radiate heat on the coldest day to help keep the animals warm, especially newborn lambs on a sub-zero day. So how do you get a barn full of crap, I mean nutrient-rich plant food, into a manure spreader? One pitchfork full at a time. There is no shortcuts or easier ways to do it. You just had to start by pushing the fork in and pulling up a piece and throwing it in the spreader. Repeat over and over until the spreader was full. Go to the field and spread it. Come back, do it again until the barn is empty. So the first lesson is there aren't always shortcuts in life. You may be faced with a huge problem and the only way to deal with it is to keep chipping away at it over and over until you finally get the job done. Number 2, work doesn't kill anyone. Pitching manure is hard work, especially in the wintertime. Because of the way I described the manure above, it was hard to pull apart. You'd stick the fork in and try to pull up a chunk, except it wasn't always that easy. First you had to break through the top layer, which meant the first few times you probably wouldn't have much on the fork. You just had to keep picking away at it until you made a hole so you could get into the thick of things. From there, things would proceed with varying degrees of success. You would keep picking away at it, maybe getting a decent forkful most of the time, but other times you might get lucky and find a layer you could peel away and make some good progress. But then you might have chunks that are too big and had to be broken down so that you could get them into the spreader without hurting yourself. So as time passed, you would try to find these weaknesses so you could exploit them to make faster progress. Yes, I was studying crap, and I knew my crap, because you needed to do something to pass the time, but also made the job easier. The second lesson is you don't have to work hard. You do have to do the hard work, but you don't have to be fanatical about it. If you use your head and study the situation, you might find ways to speed things up a bit. For all the time spent banging away at a project, it might be better to study it as you go along to find the right way to do it. Work smarter, not harder. But in the end, you still have to do the work. Number 3. It may not be your shit, but you still have to clean it up. I'm pretty sure at some point I thought it's the cow's mess, so let them clean it up. Why couldn't we teach them to use a toilet or just crap directly in the manure spreader? That is the irrational thoughts of a teenager doing a thankless job. But I would eventually realize it's our job to clean up after them. After all, we are asking them to provide us with milk and meat, so we should be able to feed them, take care of them, and clean up after them in exchange for their contributions. So the third lesson is we all have a job to do, and sometimes it's cleaning up after other people. It may not always be fair, but that's the way it is, and you just have to learn to accept it. That's a lesson I still struggle with today. At my current job as a janitor, I have to pick up other people's stuff, but if I want to get my job done, I have to pick up their stuff so I can get it done. The sooner you get started, the sooner it'll get done. Dad and I would argue, but in the end we ended up doing what he wanted, so I just wasted time I could have spent getting the job done. So you walk into a barn and look at the job that lies ahead. The biggest barn we had was 40 feet by 60 feet. That's 2,400 square feet. Depending upon how long the winter was the year before and how much straw was put down, it might be anywhere from a foot to a foot and a half deep. So let's say a foot and a half deep. 2,400 times 1.5 equals 3,600 cubic feet of crap. That's a lot of crap. And all this figuring was a lot of crap because it didn't matter how much was in there, it all had to come out. But that was the kind of pointless stuff I did along with the whining and complaining. But in the end, it all had to come out, and all I had done was make the job take longer. Lesson number 4, the work may be hard, it's going to take some time, and it's not your mess, but it still needs to be done. You spend all this time whining and complaining that you could have used to get the job done and move on to something better. Number 5, the job may stink, but it still needs to be done. So just in case I've been too subtle in making the point, I was dealing with manure. Manure stinks. A lot. Sometimes more than others. You're going along making progress, one pitchfork full at a time, when suddenly you hit a pocket that's especially potent. It makes your eyes water and you cough. Do you quit? No. You take a moment, step outside, clear your lungs, and then you go back in there and get back to work. An obstacle popped up, you dealt with it, you moved on. The final lesson is things will happen that makes your job harder. You either fix it or learn to change it and adapt to it. Nobody else can take care of it, it's yours to deal with. Now to be fair, the barns that we had, that we were able to get a loader in, we would, but that was only a couple of the barns that we had, and it would only get some of the manure out. We still had to pitch the rest. And then we had some that the only way to clean them was by hand, and you couldn't get the spreader in the barn, so we had to carry it out the door and throw it in. After Dad passed away, I did buy a wheel horse lawn and garden tractor that had a loader on it to clean out the barns with. It wasn't a skid steer, but it could also mow the lawn and pull small trailers around, so I didn't feel so guilty about buying it. I can look back now and be philosophical because it's 45 years in the past, and while time doesn't heal all wounds, it does allow them to scab over and be tolerable. I am reaching a point in my life where I can be the old man talking about the good old days. And if I'm being honest, cleaning out the barn did help me prepare for the life I have, the life that I have led. While I haven't always done the most grueling jobs, I have done physical work my whole life. After I quit farming, I worked at a potato chip plant for 11 years. That was a lot of lifting buckets of chips, rolls of film, and bags of seasoning, spending hours on a packager, putting bags in boxes, and dealing with whatever broke down. Now as a janitor, I spend hours cleaning up and repairing the building. In the summer, we have to empty out every classroom, clean it, and put it back together. Barn cleaning helped prepare me for all of them. The physical labor conditioned my body so I can work long hours moving and carrying stuff. I can still work as hard as I did as a teenager, it just takes me longer to recover. It's not because I'm Superman, but because I've learned to work smarter, not harder. And as I approach 60 years of age, I think it has left me with a body able to withstand what life throws at me. The mind-numbing repetitiveness has conditioned me to be able to do mundane work like packaging or cleaning without completely losing my mind. I've learned problem solving and the ability to assess the situations and find ways to improve it. Would I recommend it to everyone? Maybe. If I was still farming, I might offer it as a character building seminar. That way, people could pay me to gain valuable experience, and I could get the barns cleaned out while I supervise their progress. I've read Tom Sawyer. Did I mention that cleaning barns also taught me how to sling shit? If you liked this episode, please leave a review on the podcast service of your choice, and please tell your friends and family about it. Or if you want to comment, leave a voice message at anchor.fm/bardontheplains/message. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at bardontheplains or on Facebook at facebook.com/bardontheplains. If you want to email me, you can send it to bardontheplains@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit bardontheplains.com for show notes and more information. If you want to find out what other podcasts I do, please go to McPeek.podcasting.com. That's McPeek with 2 E's. To see the other shows I am doing. My most recent show is Bard on the Playlist. There I play songs and tell stories based on them. And if you want to see the other projects I'm working on, such as photography and blogging, head over to mike-mcpeek.com to check it out. I thank you for listening and hope you have a story of your own to tell.